Every game has those things. Those characters, those weapons, those features, the ones that no one ever uses. Ever. Not just things that are uncommon or niche, stuff that's used so infrequently you might even forget it's in the game. These things can be forgotten for many reasons. Bad balance, technical issues, lack of purpose, or in many cases, just because there's a better option elsewhere. The more games I play, the more of these things I see, and honestly, it makes me a little sad. I guarantee that many of those things had an individual developer that put a sizable amount of effort into said thing only for it to be abandoned and forgotten. After I began to notice this phenomenon, I decided to try and figure out why it keeps happening. I started with the most obvious factor that impacts the usage rates of in-game items: balance and relative quality. When I was gathering information on the usage rates of things in relation to their relative quality, I made an interesting discovery. I found that usage did not scale proportionally with relative quality. Here's how it actually went. Obviously, the best things were used the most. From there, it scaled down a bit, but then leveled off. The balanced items were used all about the same. Then there was a sharp drop in popularity, followed by a sharp increase with the items of the lowest quality, the stuff that's so bad it becomes a joke. This surprised me, as I had thought it would be a pretty straight line from good stuff down to bad stuff. Doing a little more digging, I was able to find a reason for this unexplained discrepancy. These items are what I would consider to be disappointing. Not good enough to be played legitimately, but not bad enough that they become popular out of irony. These items are just the ones that make you go, oh. They're in just the right spot balance-wise to make you want to forget about them, which is usually what happens. Fortunately, things don't usually get stuck here for long. Usually these things will get buffed and at least become playable, and many times they get reworked completely. Now, technical issues differ a bit from balance problems. They're usually either easy peasy fixes stemming from simple mistakes and oversights, or massive internal overhauls due to cascading long-term issues, which can come from any of a multitude of factors. Small, short-term technical problems are very common. As shocking as it may sound, developers are actually people too, and do make mistakes sometimes. Whether it's from miscommunication, oversights, or even just plain old accidents, these bugs are usually discovered, fixed, and fully patched within a month or so of their inception. Bugs are usually no biggie, and rarely stick around for long, so they typically aren't responsible for sending items to the Shadow Realm, never to be seen again. That would be where the big issues come in. Large technical problems always impact an item's popularity. While it is rare to see technical problems that only affect specific items, when it does happen, it absolutely decimates the pick rate of the affected items, especially if there are only a few things hit by the bugs. Usually, these sorts of issues come from mechanics or back-end processes that are part of an item's core functionality. Otherwise, the underlying cause would just be removed. Sometimes, when developers try to create new and unique things, they're completely experimental and don't work very well. If these poorly formed items get added to the game, they are almost universally ignored by players due to their negative impacts, which are usually in the form of performance drops or crashes. One such item from recent memory is the M3 infrared sniper rifle from Battlefield 5. If players had a specific graphics setting enabled in-game, using the scope on this rifle would instantly crash the game. Some players found workarounds for this issue, but due to the lack of explanation for the crashes and the lack of awareness of the workarounds, the gun was almost completely abandoned, and the issue still hasn't been fixed almost 5 years later. Technical problems have such a big impact on the popularity of an item because they take control out of the player's hands. No amount of practice or technique will fix frame drops and crashes. That's not to say these items don't have a chance to become popular. If their related issues get fixed, there's usually nothing else stopping them from becoming usable. Like I said earlier, many of them are unique, experimental things that bring something fresh and new to players, which is sure to garner some attention. Things with no purpose, however, are fated to a much more abysmal existence. When an item or feature isn't relevant, it usually gets forgotten almost immediately. People try it out and think, wait a minute, what's the point of this? And that's that. I don't mean things like cosmetics or other unnecessary features. I'm talking about the stuff that fills a gap that doesn't exist or accomplishes something that doesn't really provide any practical benefit to the player. They may be abandoned projects, malformed design choices, or even leftover bits from content that's been removed. Regardless of how they came into being, there's no reason to use them, and by extension, no reason for them to exist. Sometimes things are doomed to irrelevance by an entirely separate external factor. The most common example I can think of is good old in-game voice chat. Almost every multiplayer game has it nowadays, but it's largely overlooked in favor of external voice chatting platforms like Discord or TeamSpeak. Even in games like Phasmophobia and We Were Here, where voice chat is an integral part of the gameplay, many players will still opt to use external platforms for their added convenience, or just because it's the status quo. The fact of the matter is, for many players, the added immersion or quality of life from having the in-game voice chat simply isn't worth even temporarily deviating from their platform of choice. While irrelevance due to a third party is an unfortunate fact of game design and development, there is a worse fate: death by power creep. As games are updated and continuously developed over time, older content gets overshadowed by and hidden under new content. This is especially apparent with the balance of older versus newer items. New things are created, and the developers want people to use the new stuff, so they'll make it slightly better than the old stuff. Not enough of a difference to become a problem on its own, but then when more content is released, the new stuff becomes the old stuff, and the old stuff becomes the older stuff. As with before, the devs make the newest thing slightly better than the last thing, but that means it's two slightlys better than the older stuff. Repeat this process every few months over the course of 2, 3, 5, 8 years, and now all of the original content sucks compared to the newest content. This process of content degradation is called power creep, as in the slow increase in relative quality over time. While this phenomenon isn't new, it is becoming much more common and severe as live service games become the new norm. Many developers will make a point to combat power creep through buffs and reworks, but they can't save everything. Many things are lost, relegated to dark corners and seldom viewed menus. The worst thing about power creep is that it's almost entirely avoidable, with detailed planning and by keeping monetization and gameplay separate. This means that so many things are lost. So many hours of hard work by both players and developers alike to short-sighted decisions and, unfortunately, in many cases, egregious corporate greed. That being said, it is possible to come back from power creep, and I've seen it happen. Sometimes games will undergo massive overhauls, which revive things that haven't been seen or touched in years. For the things that don't make a comeback, regardless of why they're unused, the outlook is very bleak. Many of them sit for years, being completely ignored by nearly everyone. If players don't care about something and choose to ignore it, it's usually in the developer's best interest to follow suit. Larger games with more content and more varieties of content are particularly susceptible to this issue. While it is a bit sad that these things are lost, never to return, the outlook remains hopeful in a way. Sometimes the thing that's being removed has just run its course and isn't needed anymore, so it gets retired. Regardless of whether or not every item and feature sees a happy ending, the devs rarely remove content without giving the players something new to replace it, oftentimes with more being added than taken away. By letting go of things that players don't use, developers free up time, money, and effort that they can use to pursue new things, now with the added knowledge of their previous mistakes. If you look at it, it's almost like the circle of life, with new things replacing the old in due time. It's refreshing to know that even though something you may love and cherish, or hate and despise, is going away, a whole world of possibilities await, and there's no telling what the next update holds.